Hello and welcome to Rare on Air, the Eurordis Rare Diseases Europe podcast series. I'm Julien Poulain, and in this series, I speak to people from across the rare disease community who share their stories, challenges, and successes. In today's episode, I'm joined by Inês Alves from Portugal, a rare disease advocate whose journey into advocacy began when her daughter Clara was born with achondroplasia, a rare bone condition that affects skeletal growth. What started as a search for answers became a mission to bridge the gaps in information, care, and representation for people living with skeletal dysplasias. Inês went on to create the blog Beyond Achondroplasia, found the organisation ANDO Portugal, and serve as a patient representative in the European Reference Network on Rare Bone Disorders, ERN BOND. She's also a patient representative on the Committee on Orphan Medicinal Products at the European Medicines Agency, bringing the patient voice into both science and policy. In our conversation, Inês shares how her family's experience led her to advocacy, how she works to ensure that patient voices are recognised as essential partners in healthcare and research, and what gives her hope for the future of people living with rare bone diseases. Inês, thank you very much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. I'm very pleased to be here with you today, Julien.
Thank you. So the first question I'd like to ask you, Inês, is when did you first find out about your daughter Clara's achondroplasia, and what was that moment like for your family?
That's a tough question. We tend to put that back in our minds after years of having a natural experience in living with a rare diagnosis. The night she was born, something was different. And her hands looked different and the clothes were larger, but I really didn't want to see. And when we left the maternity care with a general practitioner, and he was suspicious of something, but he was not sure on exactly what. And he requested an appointment with a geneticist. And 1 week later, we were having an appointment. And the first time the geneticist said achondroplasia, my mind just put all the words together. This is because my father was a professor of Portuguese, Greek, and Latin, and medical words are very Greek and Latin based. And my brain just separated all those words, and I knew that A was a negative, and chondro was cartilage, and plasia was growth. And suddenly, when my brain put all those tiny pieces together, I saw someone in my mind with achondroplasia, and that was really life-changing. It was really tough.
I can imagine. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How would you, for someone who might not have heard of it, you have very helpfully broken down how you deduced pretty quickly what it was from its etymology, but going somewhat into its genetic origins as well. How would you describe the condition to someone who may not have heard of achondroplasia?
Yeah, when we think about genetical conditions, we think about something that may have a strong physical impact. When I actually understood what it was, my first fear was beyond the clinical impact, was how challenging was going to be her life. So when someone asks me what is achondroplasia, I have to start saying it can happen to anyone. You don't need to have that yourself to have a child with that diagnosis. And I always give a practical example for someone that usually is well known as Peter Dinklage in the Game of Thrones, which I have not ever seen. Sorry for the...
Neither have I. Neither have I.
But it's someone that people have that association. I always try to avoid using words that are negative or pejorative, because each time we say those wordings, we are just perpetuating those wordings. And I'm very confident that in 10, 20 years, we will have a new way of expressing about this group of genetical conditions that are seen still as people that serve to amuse others, which we need to just break down. So people with very short stature, very short limbs, big heads, and amazing people in a society, very resilient, always to push to the qualities and values of people, even living with a very rare and complex situation that it's very much beyond the clinical aspect. So in a societal level, it's also a very complex diagnosis.
Yeah, I'm sure. And looking back to around the time she had been diagnosed, did you feel like there was much information and support in that period between when you first heard the name of that condition and when she received the official diagnosis? Do you know whether or not that experience, maybe for a parent with a child of the condition today, do you think their experience and level of support and information would be better or about the same? So what was that experience like for you those many years ago? And what do you think that average experience is like today for parents in a similar position?
Truly expect that nowadays parents have much easier access to good information. But the reality 13 years ago, when Clara was born in 2012, was that I found very limited information. Most was in English. So I really appreciate to always have English classes and practice English. And one of my favorite topics in university was actually genetics. So
Oh,
it felt okay, let's dig this again. And I started to read more. But what was also a very impactful reality was that I understood that just a very limited number of people couldn't actually understand what was it about or how to have proper guidance. So I pretty much challenged the clinicians I met at that time in following the guideline I found. It was that moment where some professionals look at me like, who are you? Why are you saying for me to prescribe or to do this exam? But I need to just go deeper because I was confident that someone, somewhere, was researching this area. But at that time, the information was really limited. And that was why I felt the urge to start a blog that was called Beyond Achondroplasia. And it was really tough to start talking about Clara at that time. I really like to keep my life private, but it was the first step and see where I got on this road very unexpectedly, but the urge to inform other parents was there and I needed to do something.
and what did you find was in the blog that provided other parents with the most value? I know you've mentioned, obviously, that having achondroplasia, it's not just about the medical impact that condition might have, but also the kind of social impact it might have on one's day-to-day life or a family's day-to-day lives. What was the information that you found to prove so valuable for other parents? Did it tend to concern the medical or did it tend to concern the social or maybe something totally different? I'm sure it's a mix of the two, but I'm wondering how you'd characterize the contents.
Yeah, first goal was to explain in using the technical terminology because I firmly believe that learning the terminology will enable people to speak at the same level with those that use terminology. So it was like disconstructing the wording there. And I focused in the beginning very much on the clinical aspects and on research. And then I realized that I hope that shortly, then losing a lot of time in just blocking my mind in finding a treatment, I realized I had a really cute and always happy baby there. And unfortunately, she had to take a very complex surgery when she was 9 months old. And that, from one side, was awful and really complex to deal with. But on the other hand, it was the way for me to just see that there was a person there that just needed all my attention, which I really appreciate. I really shared that personal moment. And I really expect that most parents have that moment, no matter
Yeah.
what that moment looks like, and just fall in love with their babies no matter what. Then I started to progress on other topics because on the way of growing older, social challenges were much more present. I started to also tackle some of those areas, which now are much more the focus of ANDO. Still research, because I really like research and science, but that's my personal thing. But still work much more profoundly on the social aspects and enable children to become high level self-esteem people, and just try to reshape our way our society sees. So Beyond Achondroplasia started on a very research scientific level and just widened there.
I see. And what kind of feedback have you got from over the years from the blog? What have readers told you?
It was something that I truly did not expect, because at that time, I remember she was at the hospital in one of the surgeries when I started to read the emails from people from all over the world. It was so good to start really hearing them and following other parents that had kids a little bit older than Clara. So it was really insightful on what may happen next, and see how joyful some families were. So it was really unexpected. I just wanted to inform and keep myself on my close space as I was always. But it put me on a level of chatting and making good conversations, some good friendships with other parents in other points of the globe. So it was life-changing also.
That's really interesting and lovely to hear that it was actually reciprocal in ways that you hadn't expected. So you went on to found ANDO Portugal. What was your vision for that organization and how has it evolved since?
There was a need, because there was really no support for other families, no contact. And I was really so positive at that time, thinking, oh, glad other parents will feel enthusiastic in meeting each other, in talking, and seeing that they are not the only ones. But I then realized that my country, Portugal, we had that cultural feeling of being a sad people with great food.
Right. Yes.
And people just are internally depressed. Yeah, Portuguese are like that. And it felt like forever for parents to trust and to start to talk and to get closer. It was like the first couple of years, but it's a societal thing, it's a cultural thing. And after this, I saw a progression. People were starting to slowly believe that it was actually going to give them something positive. And after 10 years, because yes, this is the 10th anniversary of ANDO this year, I'm really glad to see how the organization has evolved, how so many people are reaching out. I understand that it's very tough. For me, it was really tough, but things are improving. And I now trust that ANDO is delivering a lot of good, updated, relevant information, involving parents in several projects, in being more present and participative. So I think we are evolving as well as a group of individuals that are connected by a diagnosis, but still with personal lives around. So I expect that it brings something positive to others. And
well, it's brilliant to hear again, and congratulations on the 10-year anniversary coming up. I hope you're doing some celebrations for it. So has its actual birthday passed or is it upcoming?
No, it was in May. It was in May, 26th May.
It was in May? Okay.
Yeah, but it's the 10th anniversary year, so we celebrate all the year.
You can celebrate for the whole 12 months. I think that's in order. Beyond, of course, the blog that you've mentioned, and beyond also ANDO Portugal, which themselves are no small things, you've also been very involved with the European reference networks, and in particular, the European reference network BOND, ERN BOND, which is responsible for rare bone diseases. When did you first learn about ERNs in general? And how did your involvement with ERN BOND begin?
It was by chance. A friend heard about initial pre-meeting of ERNs in Lisbon. And at that time, I was really not thinking on leaving my professional environment. And she mentioned, oh, there is going to be a meeting. I think it was 2015. about a reference network for rare diseases. And that sounded so good. And I thought, okay, I need to go there. It was in Lisbon, so in my country, facilitating travel. And it was a fantastic discovery. And when I got there, I remember seeing Lucas Sangiorgi, that is still the coordinator of ERN BOND, super enthusiastic, and a very small table where other coordinators at their table. He was so glad. He was so enthusiastic. I saw how a few clinicians were so thrilled to have a project related to rare diseases. And that meeting was just the first glance. And when I met the future coordinator, I didn't let go. And when Eurordis set applications for EPACs, I thought I need to collaborate on this. I need to give something to this. It was always on the giving side. What can I do to help you do the work? And from that point, I gladly was accepted as EPACs. So ERNs are brilliant products. They have not evolved as we have all expected. It makes people be connected. And although not a very direct impact in so many people with a rare disease, it has a lot of indirect impact. So I expect to keep contributing, maybe more than so far, although I think that I've been very close to many projects in ERN BOND, but looking forward to get it, keep growing and keep evolving and see more results. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've also been directly involved, as I understand it, in research for achondroplasia. How has that experience influenced your advocacy? And what kind of maybe advancements have you seen in research for the condition?
A lot of advances.
Oh, yeah.
So research has really pushed others to know more about achondroplasia, to put the achondroplasia in the brains of many new researchers. Doing research in achondroplasia, it's far easier when you are dealing with children and you are just in a hospital or in a university, and you have a lot of opportunity to be with those children. When you're doing research between comas yourself and with a group that is not the focus of the main research, which is children, and I really wanted to focus on adults. It's an underserved group in this rare diagnosis. It's very tough to work when you are not a clinician, when you are not at an hospital setting, and people hardly relate with not having direct advantages of getting into a research study. Like, what is that going to give me? Again, maybe cultural, maybe societal aspect on that. I managed to do that with 17 people, which was like, okay, 17 people and joined the study I planned. But it was tough. It was really tough.
What was the geography of those 17 people?
It was all across Portugal. No one from the islands, but from the continental part, the mainland, we had people from south and north and central. So it was good. Challenging, but good.
No, it would be very challenging. But yeah, because I know that because what's the prevalence again? I have one in 25,000 in my head.
Yeah, it's more or less that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess there are some which are even a hell of a lot more hard to find enough study participants for. So I think all of your work you've outlined so far in a discussion, I mean, it shows pretty patently the value of patient advocates' work. I've seen you previously say, as many patient advocates do, that patient advocates go undervalued quite often by systems. What do you think needs to change for their contribution to be properly recognized? And actually, as a question alongside that, do you feel like you've seen improvements over the years in the appreciation of and involvement of patient advocates?
I think, yes, that the involvement has increased. The understanding of the need of patient representatives' involvement is more present. Within the group of more sensitive professionals or researchers, you have that awareness very present. It's still evolving. It's an ongoing process. No comparison whatsoever from 2012 to 2025.
Really?
It's much increased, that reality of research not being done for patients, but together and in collaboration with patients and organizations. It's just a matter now to improve the level of that collaboration.
I see.
Still, many institutions or universities or researchers see the collaboration as pretty much enough if it is like supporting for recruitment or to just inform about the research. But among many groups, and obviously ERNs have increased this awareness of being part of the processes and not just being served by the process, has been very influential to escalate this understanding. Also, initiatives as the summer school, all the open academies that Eurordis has put together, this also enabled people to understand how much they could actually contribute. And in their countries, in their areas of focus, their participation is needed, has also improved the way other stakeholders and other professionals see the need for that involvement. We are not there, but it's getting better and better.
That's brilliant to hear. But it is also very positive to hear that the current relationship and level of involvement of patient advocates is totally different to how it looked, as you say, over 10 years ago. And that actually leads me on to my next question quite nicely. I've already mentioned, or we've already talked about plenty of the ways in which you've been involved in supporting people living with rare diseases and in particular achondroplasia. But there's also another thing that you have long been involved in, and that's the Committee on Orphan Medicinal Products at the European Medicines Agency. There's actually an ongoing debate in Europe right now about patient representatives' involvement on key EMA committees. In fact, it's a key issue in negotiations right now between the Council of the EU and the European Parliament. We are very much hoping, of course, that patient representatives do not see their level of involvement diminished from what the European Commission and then later the European Parliament stated that they believed the pharmaceutical legislation should enshrine. From your perspective, what is your opinion about what is at stake if patient representation is diminished or reduced in regulatory bodies like the EMA? Why is it important, in your view, that patient representation is not diminished?
It would challenge all these years that we are evolving on patient collaboration. When you talk representation, it's just a member that has real experience on rare diseases. So having now a new challenge of maybe losing this presence and this direct collaboration can hinder all this progression towards a very direct and productive collaboration. So you may feel like, oh yeah, if you don't have patient representative joining the Committee of Human Medicinal Products, the CHMP, that is the decisive, let's say, decisive committee within the EMA that sends all the indications to the Commission for approval, it will hurt all these developments. Imagine like building a house brick by brick, and it takes a person per brick, and suddenly someone puts a rocket ball just to challenge how that house holds. It's not going to put the house down, but it's going to increase the challenge. Because if you say in a university, and I give quite a few open classes about skeletal dysplasia, rare diseases, if you say, as I say many times, it's not just me wanting this, it's the Commission, it's the Parliament, it's the European regulator that has this presence of patient experts, representatives there. If that ends, it's going to disrupt.
Yeah.
And it's going to challenge further beyond this. It's going to challenge how medicines are perceived by patients that naturally may not think immediately, oh, this had the contribution of someone that actually understands what I'm going through, but is there. And this takes a lot of time to build. It's like that saying, you can take a lifetime to build a company from scratch.
Yeah.
And one day another person just takes a company and just kills it. And or a bad perception can really be the end of something. And in one day, you can break years of building something. And that's the risk.
Yeah. Interesting. And actually, how would you, from your insider's perspective, how would you characterize the value of, I know you can't talk about the discussions you may have had, for example, on the comp, but could you maybe give us a flavor of what kind of messages or insights someone like yourself, in fact, might present at a meeting that would be missing from someone on the committee who's not a patient advocate?
I have to say that the committee in which I'm involved, the Committee of Orphan Medicinal Products, even with very differentiated experts there, many clinicians, many pharmacologists, sometimes myself or my colleagues, we are 3 patient representatives. We are very polite. We raise our hands and we just calm down some discussion saying, no, that does not mean relevant aspect to a patient. And other times it's really reinforcing that the decision is really pushing good research to very high potential medicine. Because yes, unfortunately, many of the designated orphan medicinal products, when they return for market access, they don't have enough data. It's really sad because we wait for years and then the animal models, a super high potential, but then they do not present data. And it's sad for everyone. And we feel that in our skins, how important is to, when each time we put a stamp on having an orphan designation, that means a lot to people. That means a lot to parents. That means a lot to clinicians saying, okay, the EMA has granted designation is because they assess and they understand that this has potential. And seeing the product coming again and not seeing that potential in reality is really disturbing in many times. But we make sure all together and with the technical and the societal and the human aspects to be aligned. So we have very technical but human-driven discussions.
I see.
When we say no, it's because it doesn't have the power to grant expectations or hope to families and people. So many times, no is not bad. It's because they would not deliver. Yeah.
Thank you for that insider view. That's really interesting. If I may ask you 1 or 2 very final, very quick questions, because I know you've got to go. What gives you hope for the future of people living with rare bone diseases in particular? And how is Clara doing today?
Wow. Perspectives. We need to keep working. We need to keep doing research to many of hundreds of genetic skeletal dysplasia, rare bone diseases that have no research ongoing, no information. It's truly devastating. Each time a family reaches out and has a diagnosis to which I don't know, I don't have access to another family information on a clinician that actually has seen that disease, that diagnosis. I'm really focusing on pushing for research in underserved areas. And there's a lot. So I'm pushing for academics, for many other stakeholders that have the power to lead research, to see the potential and to see how much work they have ahead in so many diagnoses, so many people that are leaving those diagnoses that have zero, literally zero. So a lot of work ahead. We still have a lot to do. Clara is doing well. She went to a very complex surgery 2 weeks ago. Actually, no school today. And she is ending her physical therapy now. So that's
wow.
why I need to rush and pick her up.
Okay.
But thank you very much. Yes.
I'm delighted to hear. And thank you so much, Inês, for everything you've shared with me today. It's been a really interesting discussion. Thank you.
You're welcome, Julien. Thank you for your questions and for leading this conversation.
All right, thank you.